I gotta wait? How long I gotta wait for a press record?
Go.
Welcome to the shed, where Miss Dreme always has a story.
It's Dreme, and we got a season 2. Your Black Bostonian here, a product of a single mother who I work to make proud every single day. I'm a 3-degree holder, your veteran educator, your tech entrepreneur, and founder of the Chair platform. My platform is dedicated to supporting Black and Brown people on their hair journey by creating hairboards, connecting to hairstylists, and sharing haircare tips for a more joyous experience. My podcast is about sharing hair stories, educator stories, entrepreneurship stories, and stories surrounding identity with goals to leave you laughing, learning, and advocating. So come in and listen to the stories in the chair.
Where we share stories in the chair.
Hello, beautiful people. This is Dr. Yvette. That's crazy. I'm excited that you're here. Can you please introduce yourself?
Of course. Hi, everyone. My name is Yvette Ramirez. We had to throw in the Dr. Yvette Ramirez for at least the introduction, but we'll go by Yvette for the conversation because Dreme is my grandpig, and so she met me as Yvette. We'll go by Yvette. So I grew up in Berwyn, Illinois, which is just west of Chicago. I always say Chicago-ish. The blue line goes there, so it counts. And I'm currently living in the West Loop of Chicago. I met Dreme at Lake Forest College, where I got my bachelor's in biology. And then I went on to get my doctorate in physical therapy from Rosalind Franklin University. And I've been practicing as a physical therapist ever since. Outside of work, I like to exercise as a true physical therapist should. I'm an avid weightlifter. I also like to sprint. I like baking sweets. I'm trying to find like healthy bakings, like semi-healthy things to snack on, trying new recipes and cooking, and just hanging out with friends and family whenever I can.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so excited. So as Yvette mentioned, we met at Lake Forest, my grand little, and the first time I met you, you didn't have any hair at the time. Yeah. You just came up and had this big bubbly personality. I was like, who is this lady? And then Kat.
Why doesn't she have hair?
Yeah. I was like, and Kat, my little, was like, this is my little. And I was like, oh, I'm a grandma. and it's always been lovely just watching you grow. And I'm excited to talk about all the things you've been doing in your hair journey. So did you always know you wanted to be a physical therapist?
So I feel like that's a common question. I can't necessarily pinpoint the exact moment, but I do remember I was in high school. And for context, I went to a boarding high school. It's called the Illinois Mathematics and Science Academy. So it is a STEM school. So I was always interested in math and science more than any of the other subjects in high school. And then when I went to a math school, I realized I don't like math because it was way too intense in there. But I always liked biology, and I really, really enjoyed my physiology classes. And I think when people are interested in healthcare, a lot of times people want to be like doctors or nurses. And for some reason, I always knew I didn't want to be a physician. It just didn't seem like a lifestyle that I would enjoy. And then I thought nursing was like also just like too big of a grind for me. I was like, no, I don't know. Like it just doesn't seem like something I would really enjoy for no particular reason specifically. But someone in high school had mentioned like, oh, have you ever like considered being a physical therapist? I think in high school I was just like, I tried to exercise a lot, like after classes, not necessarily in like structured sports, but I think I was pretty young when I realized I really need it for like stress relief and in general like health. And so then someone brought that up as like a career option, and I was like, actually that does sound kind of cool. Like you get to like, help be alongside people as they're recovering from various types of injuries. And so then I went into college thinking I'll do a bio major because that will get the prereqs that I need to apply to PT school. And like kind of go like, okay, and like maybe I'll like PT, but keep an open mind. I did like dabble in research and like more of just like biology, science type thing, and I just thought it was so boring. um, I actually ended up doing a research project my freshman year at Rosalind Franklin University, which is where I ended up getting my physical therapy degree. And through that, I was introduced to the dean of students of the physical therapy program. And so when I connected with him, he allowed me to like shadow the anatomy lab. So part of PT school is doing a cadaver lab. And so I was like, okay, well, I'd rather shadow this now, because if I know that I can't, like, stomach being in a cadaver lab, then this is not going to be the
the
field for me. But
the dead
it was,
bodies you hanging out.
yes,
Okay.
yeah, just like, well, I was like, okay, like this is the moment. They open the door, and it's just like this huge basement room of just like tanks, and what's inside is like a human corpse. Thankfully there's people who decide to donate their bodies to allow medical students and all types of healthcare students learn anatomy. And I just had like, I mean, it was a little odd and like took some getting used to. I thought it was so cool. People were just like learning everything and anything that had to do with the human body. And I thought it was just miraculous. So I went on to shadow a few students there in their free clinic, and then just decided to continue on with that journey and never looked back.
So why not research? Why actually help people get back to their form of that they're most comfortable?
The research that I was doing as a freshman was more like microbiology. They were looking at like these like very specific, like like it, I think for me it was hard to like conceptualize what was going on because it's just like so small. It's microbiology, so I'm like, well, this is so weird. Like I can't even see what's going on, and we're studying these like super intricate processes that I think as a freshman, I was kind of like, okay, you spend years of your life like delving deep into super small details of like are going to be really helpful for like the long term like body of knowledge for research. But for me, it was really, really hard to like find purpose in that and like how that would like impact someone down the road. And like I saw the research, I guess like my advisor, like whatever they call them, like my like the person who's managing the lab, and his day to day was like sitting in a desk and like writing grants, and managing the people that were doing the actual research. And I was like, yeah, I can't imagine myself being really happy doing this. I think like I've always been a pretty like social person, so I was more intrigued in doing something where I would be working directly with people.
So
Yeah.
you've worked in like sports recovery, and you've worked with people who've had really severe accidents. Were you
hmm
just trying to see the whole array to figure out where your sweet spot was?
hmm Yeah, so I think physical therapy is so broad, and I think when people think like when I say I'm a physical therapist, everyone's like, "Oh man, I got this back pain, I got this shoulder pain, I got this neck pain." Check that out. I'm like, go see a physical therapist. Like that requires a full evaluation. I could list like 10 things off the top of my head that could be wrong with your shoulder, and like that would determine what would be best treatment for you. And so I think that's like the most common thing that people see in terms of like physical therapy, which I love, and that's what we mostly call like an orthopedic injury, right? There's also a branch of physical therapy that's more of a neurologic physical therapy, and so this, to give some examples, is like if someone has Parkinson's, like that's going to impact how they're moving their day to day, and maybe they don't necessarily have anything directly impacting like their like pain levels, right? Like it's very different from shoulder pain, right? They have more of a neurological brain condition, and so how can you train up their brain on like how it was impacted to help minimize the risks or the impacts that they're going to physically feel, right? The tremors, someone with multiple sclerosis, like a progressive disease, someone with um, recovering from a stroke, right? Like all of these things are the root cause of their physical impairments are coming more from the like brain and nervous system. And so you treat that very differently than you would treat a shoulder that has more of like maybe more of a mechanical issue, like something is weaker. And so I always use the analogy of like a car, right? Like if I'm a physical therapist, basically a person mechanic. And so when you have something wrong with your car, it could be a hardware issue, right? Like a piece is physically broken, right? Whether that be overused or something like that. Or with cars nowadays, it has some, like, we have so much technology in the car that is it a software issue where sometimes you get like a message saying like, hey, we need to update, right? Or it's very similar to a computer, right? Is it a hardware issue that something broke, right? The cable is broken, or is it the software, the thing that is processing how everything works? So that's like a simplistic way of kind of describing the neurological versus the orthopedic impairments that we can treat as physical therapists. And so I had a lot of experience with the more of the orthopedic side of physical therapy because I worked as a physical therapy technician at a clinic, and so I saw a lot of that treatment. And so when I graduated PT school, I wanted to delve into more of the neurologic side, and so that's what led me to the number one rehab hospital in the U.S., which is called Shirley Ryan Ability Lab, which is where you'll see the most intense strokes, the most intense like traumatic brain injuries, the most severe of spinal cord injuries. And so that's very, very different from what I had experience wise. How do you treat someone who's now paralyzed from the legs down, how to get out of their wheelchair and onto their bed? It's not something that they've ever had to think about before. And now they can't move their legs. And so sometimes it's not necessarily about rehabbing an injury, and it's just teaching people how to navigate a new body.
Where we share stories in the chair.
Look, it's my commercial. We will be right back.
It's more than just a bad hair day. It's a journey. Finding the right hairstyle isn't easy, nor is finding the right stylist or the right products. Looking in every corner of the web gets messy, overwhelming, and exhausting. All the ads, the articles, the products, the videos, it shouldn't be this hard, but it is. And now, it isn't. The Chair. A black and brown centered platform where you can design hairboards, connect to hairstylists, and share hair care tips for a new, joyful path on your hair journey. Avoid the clutter, save yourself hours, months, and even years of research and poor trial and error. Everything you need and only what you need is in one place. Hairboards made by people like you, for you. Find the right products, the right people, the right answers for you, stress-free. Join the Chair community and make every day a great hair day. When you share your pain, you allow others to help you. And when you share your success, you help others get theirs. Lean on the Chair. We got you. No stress, no strife. In the chair. The chair. The chair. All right.
Do you prefer personally working in hardware or software?
That's a great question. I really like the mix of both, which is an annoying answer. I think because I had a strong orthopedic background when I was treating people with neurological impairments, people are both. And I think there's always a strength to have really good knowledge in both, because you're going to run into orthopedic injuries with people with neurological deficits, and you're going to potentially run into people who have neurological deficits are also going to have orthopedic injuries. Just because someone had a stroke doesn't mean that they're not susceptible to shoulder pain on their unimpacted side, and so then having that general knowledge in both, I think is really, really helpful. And so the experience that I got from Shirley Ryan, even though I don't work there now, was really, really good because I was um, exposed to like the most severe cases a lot of times. And so when you see the more like the opposite of the spectrum, you can appreciate when there's like small nuances of something that you could maybe pick up on in someone that is more of like a common typical like shoulder pain, right?
Can you give me an example of a patient that you think about often that showed why it's necessary to have understanding of both hardware and software?
Yeah. Let me think of a good example. So, okay, we'll come up with a very general example. Pain is very, very complex. And I think pain science, maybe as of like a more recent, um, the medical community is trying to get a little bit more knowledge and like research on pain. There's a lot of variability in how people can perceive pain. And I think a lot of times people thought like, okay, if something hurts, then there's harm, right? If my foot hurts, that means something is wrong with it. And then we've learned that like sometimes people can experience pain, real pain, with only like the perception of harm, right? There was like an example would be like someone like fell from a building or something like that, and they saw like on their foot was like a huge nail had gone through their shoe. So like in their mind, their like foot had been completely impaled by a nail, right? And so they're going to the hospital like in severe pain, right? Because they're like in their mind that nail like is through their foot. And then when they took off the shoe, they actually realized that like the nail hadn't even touched their foot. And I forget what the mechanism of how that happened, right? But everything else was fine. And so like pain is something that could be like an orthopedic, right? Like a very real physical, like hardware issue. But sometimes it's also a software issue. And so and then that can be very complex. Like, for example, someone that's recovering from a stroke, right? Maybe they had like a software, right? Because their brain was impacted by that stroke. And even though potentially they didn't have any like physical harm on their body, they're going to have pain, maybe because they were physically impacted. But even if they were to like be walking around, like everything physically, hardware wise, is fine. The pathways that our brain has to perceive, to process pain could be impacted. And sometimes, like, there is a lot of pain. And so I think when someone is in a lot of pain, not only is it helpful and really useful for me to know all of these things about pain, but how can I explain this to the person so that they feel more comfortable with their pain and know that sometimes it's not necessarily like I'm in harm's way, because then when you feel like you're unsafe, you're hurt, then there's a whole nother layer of things, right? You start to feel worried. There's thoughts of like, will this ever go away? And that's because we have to like process pain. Can that's something that is within a person's control. Of like, if they're having negative perceptions of it, it's only gonna they're more likely to perseverate in it and like make it worse, versus if they're educated on the process and how maybe they don't necessarily have harm even though they hurt, then they're more likely to have a positive outlook on it, have hope that they will get better, that the pain will go away. And so I think that's what the healthcare community, the medical community is trying to be better at educating people on, because it is like hard when someone's in pain. They're like, hey, just make this go away.
Yeah, that's making me think about, I had COVID very severely, hospitalized. I had to get steroids. I had to get all the shots and oxygen. It was just a really intense time in the hospital. And when I was able to come back home, they said, hey, you're going to have all of these side effects. We don't really know what's going to happen to you. You're just going to have to notice things. And they said, you're going to have to take time to like get your body back. And so I had to learn how to walk again. And one of the big side effects is my memory loss. So my mother used to say, Dream, you have memory like an elephant. That was my whole childhood. It was my way of self-soothing myself. I could remember everything. I never needed to write anything down. I come out of the hospital and I couldn't remember the word for spoon.
Which word?
Spoon. I couldn't remember the word for spoon. You can see the worry in my face. And my mother was like, what is going on? And I was like, I don't know. They said, just play the brain games and all these things. And it wasn't working. And I think about your example about software. I started to panic because I couldn't figure out the words. I've had to learn how to reorient myself and navigate. I have sticky notes everywhere. I have tons of lists. I have always a pen in my pocket because my memory actually never came back. And so there are times where I still can't remember, or it takes me a long time to recall. But when it first happened after I left the hospital, I definitely felt like I was in severe pain. I felt like I was having headaches all the time because I was struggling to try to remember. But I knew that I wasn't in harm because I was already out the hospital and they already gave me the okay. And so I think that's a really helpful distinction because at the time, for me, it all just felt the same. I can't remember. My head hurts. It's all in the same category.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's a lot of like just a huge emotional component to pain, right? Like when you're stressed, you're gonna feel like if you're even like as simple as like muscle soreness, right? If you're stressed, if you're overwhelmed, if you didn't sleep well, like that's going to impact the level of pain that you feel. And so something as simple as like when people say like, oh man, today's a bad day, it's like, okay, well, did you sleep? Right? Like giving yourself a checklist of being like, is it that I'm actually like hurting, or is it like my perception of it because XYZ factors that are going to impact my perception of it? Then you can kind of ease yourself like, okay, like, like I am hurting more, but this and this, that's going to contribute to it. So like that makes sense. And I think when people are empowered with that knowledge, then it kind of like you said, it's like a self-soothing, right? You're talking about your memory, but still like when you're aware of what's going on, when you have an idea of framework, then I think that's really helpful in terms of how people can understand and have an idea of what's going on. But since you mentioned memory, I'll give you a little tip because I worked with a lot of speech therapists, right? And speech therapists, like this is their bread and butter. They could potentially speak to this a lot better than I could. But something I learned from speech therapists is that for memory, research says, and in terms of like how to assist with like strategies to help assist with memory, if that's something that you feel like is an issue, is there's an acronym that's called WRAP. So WRAP. So W is writing it down, just like you said, pen, right? So that you can remember things. R is repetition, right? People will say like memorize this, and like naturally in our head we're like this and this, like this and this. We repeat it over and over again. The A stands for association. So if you have to remember something, you have to associate it with something else. And then P is picture. So just like if you have to picture, like if you have to remember things to get from a grocery store, like you picture your fridge and like where you're going to put it, then you're more likely to remember it. So anytime someone says memory, I'm like, okay, the speech therapist that I worked with taught me WRAP. WRAP. And look, they use it there because obviously the acronym helps you remember the strategies for your memory.
Yeah. Feels like it's like wrap around my brain. Yeah, I would definitely implement that.
Writing, repetition, association, and picture.
Yeah, that's really helpful because it's definitely understanding that I have to change my world to be able to navigate it differently. There are things I can't rely on. A lot of my long-term COVID majority of it is my memory loss. And then the other part is fatigue. And so my body gives me like a warning bell where it's like, hey, don't forget your body's about to shut down on you. But through college, you work through that. You just power through it. But since coming out of the hospital, my body doesn't power through anything anymore. And so even my mother says she see my face where she's like, oh, you need to take a break. And I go, yep. My body's just giving the signal. So it's really interesting how my software and hardware are forcing me to pay closer attention. Oh, and if you're interested to learn more about my experiences as a Black woman and educator in Guangzhou, China, I wrote my first ebook titled Nowhere and Everywhere, Captured Emotions of a Beautifully Broken Love Story. It is on lulu.com. Take a read and see some beautiful photography of mine. Enjoy the rest of the show. With your education and your experience, do you see yourself as an educator?
Yeah, and I think I touched on it when I was talking about pain, right? And like, I think my role as a physical therapist, when I have someone in front of me, whether I'm treating them like an orthopedic injury or treating something like long COVID, something neurological, no matter what it is, I think people always like want to feel like you're believing them as a healthcare provider, right? Like if you come to me and say like, hey, I'm experiencing a lot of COVID, I'm like, I have these memory loss, I'm feeling this fatigue, just being like, yeah, like a lot of people are dealing with that, and like it's real, and like it's not like I don't feel it, but it's not like I'm gonna dismiss those concerns of yours, because it's a change of your life and it's something that you noticed and it's something that you are seeking help for. And like I hear you, and I'm gonna do my best to provide you with education, resources, a plan, and be a coach along your side. And I think just that, if people hearing that, they're like, oh, okay, like great. Not only do you believe me, but you assured me that this is something that other people experience, and that it's something that there's something that we can do to work on it, right? Even if sometimes it is like, if it's fatigue, right? Like building up your activity tolerance, but also what are the strategies that you have, right? Like you said, not pushing through, learning to pace yourself, right? And so these are conversations that I have with my patients, of giving them all of the tools that I've been taught and I've seen succeed in other people, but also giving them the knowledge where they feel like they can participate in their plan of care, where they feel like, oh, you told me about this, like in terms of like, right, the science that we've learned as physical therapists, like the biomechanics, all of the things that we have to learn. Of all of that knowledge that I have, what can I pinpoint to give to you, so that way you feel you're empowered, or at least can ask questions, right? And be like, hey, you talked about this, like, can you tell me more about this? How does this play in a role for me? Because then people are more involved in their own care, and are just more like bought into it and motivated, because like I think it's very important to advocate for like self-efficacy, and like for them to feel like, okay, like I understand what's going on with my body, and so then I know how to manage it, versus like me just giving them like, okay, we're going to do this, this, and this, and you have no idea why. Then it's a lot harder to feel really motivated and encouraged.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Being able to understand the why behind the decisions to take care of yourself. Why is this helpful? Why should I do it this way than the way that I have been doing it? It's that collaborative experience to make sure that the goal is for you to get better.
Exactly. How do you feel like your like long COVID recovery has been going? Do you feel like you're at a point where you've like kind of plateaued? Does that get frustrating? Do you feel like you've kind of found your new normal?
New normal, yeah. There's things that I still feel that I'm working on building for this new normal. Definitely, I do a lot of brain exercises, because for a long time, when I got out of the hospital and I went back for my checkup and things, they're like, oh, give yourself 6 months, it'll come back. Give yourself 6 months to 14 months, it'll come back. So there was a part of me that was just holding on that it'll come back. Do the breathing exercises to make sure that your lungs good. Are you doing the exercises to make sure that you're walking okay? All these things that I was starting to be like, okay, I'll do all these things and my memory will come back. and this fatigue will stop. So I was working with the assumption that everything would come back. And then when it hit 14 months and the fatigue didn't stop and the memory wasn't working, I feel that that's when it started to change for me, where I had to adjust with the belief that this is a new normal and then work in that direction. So right now, it's been a few years. And so I feel that I'm doing better. I'm trying to find ways to reduce stress. Stress makes the memory worse for me. Just like as you mentioned earlier. So if I can't remember something now, when I'm stressed, I really can't remember. And so I have to work on that and find other ways to soothe. My memory was such a big part of my self-soothing as just a human being. And now that it's gone, I have to have other ways to relax. And that's a whole new journey for me, which I've never had to experience because I never thought that I would lose that part of me. So I'm still working on it.
It's interesting because when you said do my breathing exercises, my mind went immediately to like long exhale breathing to like down regulate the nervous system so that your brain is, or like your body isn't as much in the fight or flight so that you could think more clearly. And then you said to strengthen my lungs. I'm like, oh yeah, that too. I'm like, oh right, like if your lung, like obviously your lungs are impacted. But that like, I guess I'm just so used to like the importance of like mindfulness, relaxation in those states when, especially when you're like, we're in the hospital for a long time, right? Like your body was really like in that fight or flight mode because it was fighting for its life, And so sometimes I think having to work to like down regulate, I'm with you. It's a tough thing. And like, I think as we age for some reason, like it's like, okay, like stress management is a huge thing and I have to really work on it versus before. I think like, you just don't, it was just easier. And so I'm glad that that is something that inadvertently you've had to work on. But I think as that improves, then I think maybe potentially you could see a correlation with like you said, the stress impacting your memory. And so if the stress is in general going down, maybe that memory will have a little bit more room to improve as well.
Yeah, it's weird because I have to take my time. I give myself like, hey, just because you change this thing for 2 weeks doesn't mean that it's gonna work. You gotta do things in 3-month increments, and then you have to check yourself out and think about other factors that will throw your system off. So I lost my uncle to a heart attack. I was helping my mother with all the funeral planning and et cetera, et cetera. And so grief has definitely messed with my brain and it's messed with my fatigue. And I was like, well, all these things that I did, why am I feeling out of whack? But I'm like, oh, grief is a whole different beast on top of what I was trying to sustain. So it's definitely thinking about that stress management, working on it, definitely working on it.
Yeah, sorry to hear about your uncle, but yeah, you're right. I mean, and like, yeah, grief is a whole nother monster on its own. Same thing, right? I think you and I are both very the type to overachieve and expect a lot of ourselves, and it's extremely hard to slow down and to give ourselves time. And I find that I think in general a lot of people do that, and so it's an honor to be at a place where I can coach people alongside. And if I feel like they just need a kick in the butt and then they just need someone to sergeant them and push them, I can. And a lot of times I have to tell them, hey, you're doing all you can and you need to try a little less. Like you're doing a lot and sometimes you have to try a little less and it goes a longer way. So it's really interesting to be able to see both ends, but I'm sure you will continue on with your journey and you'll figure things out along the way. It's always a journey.
Yes, ma'am. Well, Dr. Yvette, thank you so much for sharing your stories in the chair. I truly, truly appreciate it.
I appreciate you having me on. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you.
Welcome to the chair, where Miss Dreme always has a story.
Thank you for listening to an episode of The Chair. I'm going to share with you a dream of mine. I would love to be on Sesame Street. Sesame Street held my hand through childhood. In my dream, I would be in my big afro or rainbow braids sitting on the stoop sharing hair stories. I would like your help, please, by doing all the things like leave a review, share it with someone who would benefit from hearing this episode. And if you know someone who knows someone who knows someone at Sesame Street, share your favorite episode with them, and I'll make you some of my famous chocolatey hot chocolate. I hope you have a beautiful day, or if you are like me, still up in the middle of the night, I hope you take a deep breath and rest. Love you. Talk to you later.
The chair.
Hello. Please leave a message after the tone.
Dream, hello. I just wanted to tell you you're wonderful. I just got through going through your podcast. Love you, love you, love you, love you. Keep it up. Maybe I need to send it to Oprah and Tyler Perry. Love you, baby. You are great.
Where we share stories in the chair.